Chosen ones, if you found this, I need you to slow down for a second and really hear me, because this is not noise, this is not random, and this is not meant to be consumed casually. There are thousands of videos you could have clicked, hundreds of voices calling for your attention, yet here you are, and that alone tells me something about you. This message wasn't designed for the crowd. It wasn't crafted for everyone. It was shaped for a very specific moment, for a very specific soul, and the fact that you're listening right now is already confirmation that you're closer to the truth than you realize. There are things happening behind the scenes that you can't see yet, movements being set into place that don't make sense on the surface, and you may have been feeling that strange tension lately, like something is about to shift, but you can't explain how or when. That feeling is not anxiety, it's alignment. It's the quiet pressure that comes before elevation. You've probably noticed that the more you grow, the more isolated you become. People don't call as much. Conversations feel shallow. Places that once felt familiar now feel heavy. That's not because something is wrong with you, it's because you're being repositioned. There is a reason this video feels different, a reason it feels like it's speaking directly to you, using words that echo thoughts you haven't said out loud. You're not imagining that connection, you're remembering who you are. And the reason this video will be private soon is because not everyone is supposed to hear this level of truth. Some people would misunderstand it, some would mock it, some would misuse it. But you are ready for it, and readiness is everything. Right now, you might be standing in the middle of uncertainty. You've done the work, you've stayed patient, you've kept your integrity even when shortcuts were offered, and yet the breakthrough hasn't fully arrived. That delay wasn't denial, it was protection. If certain doors had opened earlier, you would have walked into rooms that weren't prepared to handle you and environments that would have diluted your purpose. So you were slowed down on purpose, hidden on purpose, redirected on purpose. There are moments in life when silence is not absence, it's strategy. And you've been in a strategic silence, even when it felt lonely. Think back over the last few months. The sudden endings that didn't come with explanations, the plans that fell apart at the last minute, the people who revealed their true intentions just in time. None of that was accidental. You were being trained to trust what you feel even when logic can't support it yet. You were being taught discernment. And discernment is one of the clearest signs that someone is chosen for something greater. Anyone can see what's obvious, only a few can sense what's hidden. This message is reaching you now because there is a decision coming that will define your next chapter. It may not look dramatic, it may seem small on the surface, but it will require you to choose courage over comfort, truth over approval, and growth over familiarity. You've outgrown certain versions of yourself, and the universe will not allow you to go back, no matter how tempting it feels. That's why old patterns aren't working anymore. That's why distractions don't satisfy you like they used to. You're being sharpened, not punished. There's also something else you need to know. Not everyone who smiled at you wanted to see you win. Not everyone who advised you had your best interest at heart, and you've recently started to see that clearly, sometimes painfully so. Betrayal is a harsh teacher, but it reveals loyalty, and loyalty reveals alignment. The disappointment you felt was not meant to break you, it was meant to wake you up. You were never meant to shrink to stay connected to people who are afraid of your potential. You've been carrying a quiet strength, one that doesn't need validation. You keep showing up even when no one is applauding. You keep believing even when evidence is thin. That's rare. And that rarity comes with responsibility. You're not here to blend in. You're here to set a tone, to shift atmospheres, to remind others of what's possible simply by being who you are. That's why resistance has followed you. Light always challenges darkness just by existing. This is also a season of release. There are things you must stop explaining, battles you must stop fighting, doors you must allow to close without needing closure. Closure is overrated when clarity has already been given. Trust what's being removed, trust what's being delayed, trust what's being accelerated. Everything is working together, even the parts that don't feel good yet. If you've been feeling tired in a way sleep doesn't fix, it's because you've been carrying more than your share. Emotional weight, unspoken responsibility, expectations that were never yours to begin with. It's time to put some of that down. Strength doesn't mean carrying everything alone. Strength means knowing when to rest without quitting, when to pause without doubting, when to step back without giving up. The next phase of your life will require a clearer voice and a calmer spirit. You won't be chasing anymore. You won't be proving anymore. You won't be forcing connections or outcomes. What's meant for you will recognize you. What's aligned will meet you halfway. And what isn't will naturally fall away without drama. That's maturity. That's power under control. You may not see it yet, but people are already watching how you handle this quiet season, how you respond when you're not celebrated, how you speak when you're misunderstood, how you move when you're underestimated. These moments are shaping your authority. And when your time comes, when your voice carries further, when your influence expands, you'll be grounded enough to handle it because you were refined in private. There's a reason this message feels urgent but calm at the same time. You're being reminded, not rushed, called forward, not pressured. This isn't about fear of missing out. It's about awareness of stepping in. You're closer than you think. Closer to clarity, closer to alignment, closer to the life that once felt too distant to imagine clearly. So take this moment seriously, not with anxiety, but with intention. Pay attention to what keeps repeating. Notice what feels heavy and what feels peaceful. Your intuition has been getting louder for a reason. You're being guided even when the path looks quiet, especially when it looks quiet. And as this message continues to unfold, as these words settle deeper, understand that this isn't the end of what you need to hear. It's only the opening of something that's been waiting patiently for you to be still enough, aware enough, and ready enough to receive what comes next. Because the next part of this journey isn't about becoming someone new. It's about finally allowing yourself to fully step into who you've been all along, even as questions remain unanswered and the road ahead is still partially hidden. Because what matters most right now is not seeing the entire picture, but trusting the next step as it begins to reveal itself in ways that may challenge what you expected, but confirm what you've always felt deep down inside as the momentum quietly builds and the silence starts to speak louder than ever before. And as that silence speaks, it will start answering questions you didn't even know how to ask. You'll begin to notice how things align without force, how conversations happen at the exact moment you need them, how opportunities appear not through struggle, but through recognition. This is not coincidence, this is calibration. You're finally operating on the frequency of who you truly are, not who you were trying to be to survive. And survival mode has taught you a lot, but it was never meant to be your permanent home. There was a time when you doubted yourself more than anyone else ever could. You replayed mistakes, questioned decisions, wondered if you missed your moment. But here's the truth you need to absorb deeply. Nothing that is truly meant for you can pass you by. Delays do not mean denial. Detours do not mean failure. Sometimes they mean refinement. And refinement always feels uncomfortable before it feels rewarding. You weren't being held back, you were being built up in ways that couldn't happen publicly. You've developed resilience without becoming bitter, wisdom without losing curiosity, discernment without closing your heart. That balance is rare. Many people harden when life pressures them, but you soften in the right places while strengthening your core. That's why this next chapter won't break you, even if it stretches you. You're no longer afraid of being alone, and that alone shifts everything. When loneliness no longer controls you, nothing else can. You may have noticed that you don't react the way you used to. Things that once triggered, you now barely register. Arguments that once drained you now feel unnecessary. That's growth. That's emotional authority. And emotional authority is power most people never develop. It allows you to move through chaos without becoming it, to observe without absorbing, to listen without losing yourself. This is also a season where your words carry weight even when you're not trying to be persuasive. People feel something when you speak. They may not understand it, but they sense it. That's because you're no longer speaking from insecurity. You're speaking from alignment. And alignment doesn't shout. It resonates. You don't need to announce who you are becoming. Those who are meant to know will feel it. There will be moments ahead where you're tempted to go back to what's familiar simply because it's comfortable. Old habits, old connections, old versions of yourself that required less responsibility. But every time you consider that step backwards, something inside you will resist. That resistance is not fear, it's self-respect. You've crossed a line internally that you can't uncross. You've seen too much, felt too much, grown too much to pretend otherwise. You're learning that peace is more valuable than approval, that clarity is worth more than popularity, that purpose matters more than pace. And because of that, your life is starting to reorganize itself. Things that don't support your peace will naturally fade. Things that align with your purpose will quietly strengthen. You won't have to force this process. It will happen as a result of who you're becoming. Pay attention to how your priorities are shifting. What excites you now may not look impressive to others, but it feels right to you. That's your compass recalibrating. You're no longer chasing external validation, you're building internal stability. And from that stability, everything else will grow more solid, more sustainable, more real. There's also a deeper truth you need to sit with. You've been protected from things you once begged for, relationships that would have limited you, opportunities that would have cost you your integrity. paths that looked successful on the surface but would have drained your spirit. What felt like rejection was actually redirection, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. You're stepping into a phase where discernment will be more important than effort. You won't need to do more. You'll need to choose better. Not every open door is yours to walk through. Not every invitation deserves your energy. And you're finally comfortable saying no without guilt, without over-explaining, without fear of missing out. That's maturity settling in. People may start treating you differently. Some will be drawn to your calm. Others will feel threatened by your clarity. Both reactions are normal. You're no longer trying to be understood by everyone. You're focused on being authentic, and authenticity always filters your environment. Those meant to walk with you will adjust. Those who aren't will drift, and that's okay. You've also learned that strength doesn't always look like action. Sometimes it looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like restraint. Sometimes it looks like waiting without complaining. And you've done that quietly, even when no one was watching. That quiet discipline is building something powerful within you, something that can't be shaken easily. As you move forward, you'll feel less need to rush. You understand now that timing is everything. You're no longer afraid of missing your chance because you trust that what's meant for you will meet you when you're ready to handle it. And readiness isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. You're aligned in ways you didn't even realize a year ago. You may still have moments of doubt. That's human. Growth doesn't eliminate doubt, it just changes how you respond to it. Instead of spiraling, you pause. Instead of reacting, you reflect. Instead of quitting, you recalibrate. That's evolution in motion. And if every time you choose awareness over impulse, you strengthen your foundation. There is a quiet confidence forming within you, one that doesn't need to prove itself. You don't need applause to validate your progress. You can feel it internally. You know you're not where you used to be, even if you're not fully where you're going yet. That in-between space is sacred. It's where identity solidifies. And understand this clearly, not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some people benefited from the old version of you, the one who overgave, over-explained, overextended. When you stop doing that, it can feel like rejection to them. But you're not rejecting anyone. You're choosing yourself. And that choice will continue to reshape your life in ways that feel unfamiliar at first, but deeply right over time. You're also learning to trust your pace. You're not late. You're not behind. You're not off track. You're moving in rhythm with your own becoming. Comparison no longer motivates you. It exhausts you. You're focused on your lane now, and that focus will take you further than frantic speed ever could. Moments of stillness will become more meaningful. You'll start to appreciate silence not as emptiness, but as clarity. In silence, you hear yourself again. In silence, you reconnect with what matters. In silence, you remember that you don't need to chase noise to feel alive. You're alive when you're present. There's a strength in you that was forged through disappointment, not destroyed by it. You didn't let life harden you into someone you're not. You let it teach you boundaries, wisdom, patience. And those qualities are quietly positioning you for something that requires depth, not just talent. Anyone can shine briefly. Few can sustain purposefully. You're entering a season where things make sense in hindsight, even if they still feel unclear in the moment. Trust that understanding will come when it's needed. Not everything needs to be explained right now. Some things need to be lived first. You're learning to be okay with that. As you continue forward, remember that you don't need to announce your next move. You don't need to justify your growth. You don't need permission to evolve. You've already survived what you thought you couldn't. You've already outgrown what once defined you, and you're already becoming someone stronger, calmer, clearer than you've ever been before, even as the path continues unfolding step by step, moment by moment, lesson by lesson, without rushing toward an ending, without demanding immediate certainty, because this phase isn't about finishing anything. It's about deepening, refining, and anchoring into the truth of who you are as the journey keeps moving forward in ways that will continue to reveal themselves as you stay present, aware, and willing to trust the process as it keeps carrying you onward. And as you keep moving forward, you'll start to realize that the version of you who once needed constant reassurance has quietly stepped aside. In its place is someone who listens more than they speak, someone who observes patterns instead of reacting to moments. That shift didn't happen overnight. It came from being disappointed and choosing not to close your heart, from being misunderstood and choosing not to harden your spirit, from being overlooked and choosing not to lose your sense of worth. Those choices stacked up day after day and built something unshakable inside you. There were nights when you questioned whether staying true to yourself was worth it. Nights when compromise looked tempting because it promised relief. But even then, something within you refused to settle. You couldn't betray your inner voice. even when ignoring it would have been easier. That voice is quieter than fear, but stronger than doubt, and it has guided you through situations you couldn't logic your way out of. That's not luck. That's alignment strengthening over time. You're also beginning to see that not every delay needs to be filled with action. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait without resentment, to stay open without chasing, to remain grounded without knowing exactly how things will unfold. That kind of patience doesn't come from passivity, it comes from trust. And trust is something you've earned through experience, not optimism. People may look at your life and think you're moving slowly, but they don't see the depth of what's happening beneath the surface. Roots grow in silence. Foundations are laid unseen. And when your time comes to rise, it won't be fragile or rushed. It will be steady, intentional, and undeniable. You're not here for a quick moment of attention. You're here for something that lasts. There's also a new clarity forming around what you will no longer tolerate. Disrespect disguised as humor, inconsistency masked as busyness, promises without follow-through. You've learned that accepting less doesn't make you humble, it makes you unavailable to what you truly deserve. So you're raising your standards quietly, without announcing them, without demanding anyone change. You're simply choosing better for yourself. You may notice that you're becoming more selective with your energy, not because you're cold, but because you finally understand how valuable it is. Energy is life. Where you place it determines what grows, and you're done watering things that were never meant to bloom. That doesn't make you selfish, it makes you wise. As this season continues, your intuition will sharpen even further. You'll sense when something is off without needing evidence. You'll feel when a conversation carries truth or avoidance. You'll recognize opportunities that look ordinary but carry long-term significance. And you'll walk away from things that look impressive but feel misaligned. That internal guidance is becoming more reliable than external opinions, and that's a powerful place to stand. You've also learned the difference between solitude and loneliness. Solitude restores you, loneliness drains you, and you no longer confuse the two. Time alone has become a place of recalibration rather than escape. It's where you reconnect with your intentions, where you remind yourself why you started, where you realign with your values when the world feels noisy. There will be moments ahead when you're tested again, but not in the same way as before. These tests won't be about endurance, they'll be about choice. Choosing integrity when shortcuts appear, choosing patience when pressure mounts, choosing authenticity when conformity would bring quick approval. And every time you choose an alignment, you reinforce the path you're on. You are also starting to understand that growth doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like confusion, sometimes it feels like stillness, sometimes it feels like letting go of an identity that once kept you safe, but safety and fulfillment are not the same thing. You've tasted just enough fulfillment to know you can't go back to merely surviving. There's a quiet preparation happening in your life right now. Skills being sharpened, perspectives being broadened, emotional intelligence being refined. Even your challenges are serving a purpose, teaching you how to lead yourself before you're asked to lead anything else. You're becoming someone who can hold responsibility without losing themselves, who can influence without controlling, who can succeed without forgetting where they came from. You might feel like you're standing on the edge of something, sensing that change is close but not fully visible yet. That feeling isn't meant to make you anxious. It's meant to keep you aware, to remind you to stay present, to encourage you to move thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Big shifts rarely announce themselves loudly before they arrive. You've also learned to forgive yourself for past versions that didn't know what you know now. You no longer shame yourself for choices made in confusion or fear. You recognize that every step, even the missteps, carried lessons that brought you here. That self-forgiveness has freed up energy that was once stuck in regret, and now it's available for creation. As your awareness deepens, you'll notice how little you need to prove. You're not interested in convincing anyone of your worth. You're more focused on living in a way that feels honest and grounded. And that quiet confidence will draw the right people, the right conversations, the right opportunities into your life without force. There's also an important shift happening in how you see success. It's no longer just about outcomes, it's about alignment, about waking up without dread, about moving through your day without pretending, about feeling connected to what you're doing and why you're doing it. That definition of success may look simple to others, but it's deeper. Why fulfilling? You may still encounter moments where the old doubts resurface, where the mind tries to pull you back into questioning everything. But now you don't stay there. You acknowledge the doubt without letting it take control. You listen, then you return to what you know in your body, in your intuition, in your lived experience. That's mastery developing. The more you trust yourself, the less you seek permission, the less you explain, the less you apologize for evolving. You're learning that clarity doesn't need to be loud. Boundaries don't need to be harsh. And confidence doesn't need to dominate a room to be felt. It's enough to be consistent, grounded, and true. As you continue walking this path, you'll realize that you're not chasing a destination anymore. You're embodying a way of being. And from that place, everything you build will carry your signature, your integrity, your depth. That's what makes it meaningful. That's what makes it sustainable. There's still more unfolding, more to understand, more to step into, but you don't need to rush toward it. Each step will reveal itself when you're ready to take it. For now, it's enough to stay aware, to stay open, to stay aligned with what feels true, even when the full picture isn't clear yet, because clarity isn't always given all at once. It arrives in layers, through experience, through presence, through quiet moments of recognition that continue to guide you forward as this journey keeps expanding, evolving, and deepening in ways that will only fully make sense as you keep moving, trusting, and allowing the process to unfold without forcing an ending, without demanding certainty, as the momentum continues to build and carry you into whatever comes next. And as that momentum carries you, you'll start noticing subtle confirmations everywhere, small signals that feel personal, moments that seem to whisper rather than shout. A sentence you overhear that answers a question you were holding quietly. A pause in your day that suddenly feels meaningful instead of empty. These are not distractions. They're reminders that you are being guided even when no one is explaining the map. Guidance doesn't always come as instructions. Sometimes it comes as reassurance that you're still on the path even when it curves. You're also realizing that your sensitivity, the thing you once thought was a weakness, is actually one of your greatest strengths. You feel deeply, perceive nuance, sense shifts before they happen. In the wrong environment, that sensitivity exhausted you. In the right alignment, it sharpens your awareness. You're learning how to protect it without suppressing it, how to use it without letting it drain you. That balance is something you earned, not something you were born knowing. There was a phase when you felt like you were falling behind while everyone else seemed to move ahead effortlessly. But now you can see that many people were moving quickly without direction, while we were being slowed down to develop clarity. Speed without clarity leads to burnout. Clarity without speed leads to mastery. You're being prepared for something that requires presence, not panic. You're also beginning to understand that not every truth needs to be shared immediately. Some truths are meant to be lived first. You've stopped trying to convince others of what you know internally. You're more interested in embodying it. And embodiment is powerful because it doesn't argue, it simply is. People feel it before they understand it. There's a calm forming in how you handle uncertainty now. You don't spiral the way you used to. You sit with questions longer. You allow answers to arrive naturally. That patience is a sign of inner security. You trust yourself enough to not rush clarity, and that trust changes how life responds to you. You may notice that certain desires you once chased intensely have softened, not because you gave up, but because your priorities shifted. You want depth over distraction, meaning over momentum, stability over spectacle, and those desires are aligning you with a different kind of fulfillment, one that doesn't fade as quickly as excitement does. You're also learning that rest is not something you earn after exhaustion. It's something you require to stay aligned. You no longer glorify burnout. You respect your limits. You listen to your body. That awareness is keeping you grounded as your responsibilities grow. Expansion without grounding kala. PSEs. You're building both. There will be times when the old world tries to pull you back in, tempting you with familiar chaos, familiar validation, familiar noise, but it won't feel the same anymore. What once stimulated you now feels hollow. What once distracted you now feels heavy. You're not losing interest in life. You're gaining discernment. You're also becoming more comfortable with being misunderstood, not in a bitter way, but in a peaceful one. You've realized that being fully understood by everyone is not a requirement for living truthfully. Some people will project their fears onto your choices. Others will question your timing. You don't need to correct them. You're walking your path, not performing it. There's a quiet leadership developing within you, not the kind that seeks control, but the kind that inspires by example. You hold space differently now. You listen without needing to fix. You speak without needing to dominate. That presence makes people feel seen, even when you say very little. and presence is more influential than persuasion. You're also recognizing patterns from your past with new eyes. Old wounds that once defined you now feel like chapters rather than identities. You don't deny what you went through, but you don't live there anymore. You've integrated those experiences into wisdom, and wisdom moves differently than pain. It's lighter, it's calmer, it doesn't rush. As this chapter continues unfolding, you may feel a pull towards simplifying your life. Fewer obligations, fewer distractions, fewer explanations. That simplification isn't withdrawal, it's refinement. You're creating space for what actually matters, and space is necessary for clarity to breathe. You're also learning that consistency is more powerful than intensity. Small aligned actions taken regularly are reshaping your reality in ways you can't yet fully see. You don't need dramatic breakthroughs every day. You need grounded progress, and that's exactly what you're cultivating. There's an inner steadiness now when challenges appear. You don't panic, you assess, you respond rather than react. That emotional regulation is evidence of growth you once wished for during your hardest moments. You're living the answer to prayers you forgot you made. You may still feel moments of impatience, moments when you wish things would move faster or be clearer. That's human, but impatience no longer controls your decisions. You've learned that forcing outcomes creates consequences you don't want to manage. You'd rather wait in alignment than rush into regret. You're also discovering that your intuition speaks most clearly when you're honest with yourself. When you stop pretending you're okay with things you're not. When you acknowledge discomfort instead of masking it. That honesty strengthens your inner guidance. You can't hear yourself clearly when you're not being truthful internally. There's a growing sense that your life is about to open in ways that require responsibility, not just excitement. And you're ready for that. You've done the inner work to hold what's coming without losing yourself in it. That's why this preparation period mattered so much. You're also realizing that you don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to engage in every conversation. You don't need to respond to every opinion. Selective engagement is not avoidance, it's focus. And focus is what allows depth to develop. As you move forward, you'll continue shedding versions of yourself that were built for survival, not fulfillment. That shedding can feel uncomfortable, even lonely at times, but it creates room for authenticity to take root. And authenticity always attracts what is real. There's a sense of inevitability now, not in a dramatic way, but in a grounded one. You know you're moving toward something meaningful, even if you can't name it yet. That knowing doesn't come from ego, it comes from alignment. You're no longer questioning your worth, you're refining your direction. And as this unfolds, you'll notice how much quieter your mind becomes when you trust yourself. Overthinking fades when trust deepens. Anxiety loosens when presence strengthens. You're not trying to control every outcome anymore. You're participating with awareness. There is still more to integrate, more to release, more to embody. But you don't need to reach the end to be on the right path. Being on the path is enough. Each step is teaching you something. Each pause is preparing you for something. And as long as you stay honest, present, and aligned, this journey will keep revealing itself layer by layer without rushing toward an ending, without wrapping itself up neatly, continuing forward in the same steady rhythm that has carried you this far and will keep carrying you as the unfolding continues. And now, as this message comes to rest with you, understand that nothing here was meant to impress you, rush you, or convince you of anything you don't already feel deep inside. This was meant to remind you, to steady you, to bring you back to yourself in a world that constantly pulls you outward. You didn't come this far by accident, and you didn't endure what you endured without purpose. Every delay sharpened you. Every loss clarified you. Every quiet moment strengthened you. You are not waiting for life to begin anymore. You are already standing in it, aware, grounded, and awake. What comes next will not require you to become someone else, only to continue being honest, present, and aligned with the truth you now carry. Trust what you feel. Honor what's unfolding. Move forward without fear, without forcing, without doubting your worth, because the path ahead will meet you exactly where you are, and everything meant for you will recognize you the moment you arrive.